The Hollywood Unapologetic Podcast with Orlando Delbert, Filmmaking Essentials. Think about those moments, when a film just clicks. When you see something on screen that feels like it reflects something true. Exactly that for so many people, and is still making waves. We're talking about Black Panther.
And we've got a lot to draw on here. I mean, we're looking at everything from sociological analyses, psychological takes on identity, industry perspectives on Hollywood.
Even fan discussions, right?
Yeah.
Capturing that real cultural buzz.
Exactly. It's a really rich picture we can build.
For sure. And our goal, really, is to unpack how Black Panther became more than just a movie, how it became this cultural touchstone.
Mm-hmm.
We want to get into its lasting effect, on how people of African descent see themselves, its impact on society, and how it seriously shook up Hollywood.
Especially for Black audiences and a new Hollywood generation of creators.
Right. You even hear that term connected to discussions like those on, say, the Hollywood Unapologetic Podcast with Orlando Delbert. It signals a real shift is happening. So let's dig in.
Okay, so to really get why Black Panther was such a big deal, we kind of have to rewind a bit. Think about the media landscape it entered.
Yeah, it wasn't exactly overflowing with positive Black representation, was it?
Not at all. For decades, African Americans were, seriously underrepresented in mainstream media.
Yeah.
And when they were shown...
Well, it was often those same old stereotypes, right?
Exactly. The angry Black woman, the criminal, the athlete, the entertainer. These really narrow, often negative boxes.
And that kind of stuff has a real impact, doesn't it? Especially on young people trying to figure out who they are.
Absolutely. Psychology sources point out how this lack of diverse, positive images really gets in the way of healthy identity development for Black youth. Imagine constantly seeing distorted reflections of your community.
It makes it so much harder to build a strong sense of self. Plus, there's the whole history of whitewashing in Hollywood.
Oh, yeah. Talented Black actors often just didn't get the opportunities. I mean, one source noted that in the first, 77 years of the Oscars, only about 3% of acting nominees were Black.
Wow, 3%. That's tiny.
It is. And even when they did get roles, they were often minor stereotypical, sometimes even roles played by white actors in blackface, historically speaking.
A really grim picture.
It really highlights the erasure and misrepresentation that was just normal.
Yeah.
And that's the context Black Panther exploded into.
Which is why it felt so revolutionary. It wasn't just a movie with Black actors.
Mm-hmm.
It directly confronted that history by showing diverse, positive images.
And Wakanda itself, that was huge. This incredibly advanced, resource-rich African nation, unified culture, social equality, a just vision of power.
It completely flipped the script on how Africa is usually shown.
Yeah.
None of the usual, often negative stereotypes.
Totally. It offered this alternative vision, a narrative of pride, deep cultural heritage, nobility, Black excellence, self-determination. It was powerful stuff.
And you can see how that connects to psychological ideas, like racial socialization, building that cultural pride.
Definitely. The film gave people, especially young people, those positive, affirming images that were missing. It helped foster a real connection to Black culture and heritage.
It wasn't just entertainment. It was like giving tools, resources to evaluate the images they see and build resilience.
Right. And research shows that this kind of positive racial socialization, it has real benefits. Better mental health, more pro-social behavior, even less susceptibility to something called stereotype threat.
Ah, yeah, that fear of confirming negative stereotypes about your group.
Exactly. Black Panther helped push back against that.
So it makes sense why it became more than a movie. It was a phenomenon, a movement almost.
People really felt it. Online discussions, for instance, were full of people talking about the pride it evoked, how it celebrated African American and African culture. It felt personal.
I remember seeing that comparison someone made. Was it Stephen Barnes comparing it to Star Wars for Black audiences?
Yeah, that's a powerful one. He said it felt like it was made for them, that the hero represented everything stolen by slavery, history, culture, strength.
A reclamation. And it was different from earlier Black superhero films too, wasn't it? Like Blade or Hancock.
It was. Those films had Black leads, sure, but Black Panther was unique. It centered on an African king, a thriving African nation, not a vampire, not a flawed guy who happens to have powers.
That focus on African royalty and an uncolonized advanced nation, that was key.
It really challenged that default assumption that superheroes are white guys. It just blew that wide open.
And the fact that the cast was overwhelmingly Black from across the diaspora, plus a Black writer-director, Ryan Coogler, that authenticity mattered hugely.
Oh, absolutely. It wasn't just representation. It was representation done right from within the community.
And seeing those powerful images, it could actually help dismantle some of those negative internal beliefs people might have absorbed, right?
That's the idea. Seeing positive reflections can actively repudiate negative assumptions. It provides that counter-narrative visually.
And maybe, over time, seeing Black characters as heroes, leaders, scientists, it starts to feel more normal. It shifts perceptions.
Exactly. Repeated exposure can normalize things. And apparently, Coogler himself was talking about African identity at screenings, really engaging with these themes directly.
Okay, let's shift gears a bit to Hollywood itself, because the impact there was massive.
Undeniable. Its success just demolished that old Hollywood myth that films with predominantly Black casts or diverse casts wouldn't sell internationally.
It proved the opposite, big time. Billions of dollars say otherwise.
Right. And specifically for Black women's representation, it was huge, showcasing them as leaders, warriors, geniuses in tech.
Shuri, Okoye, Nakia,
Yeah.
Ramonda.
It really fed into that whole hashtag Black Girl Magic moment, shattering those limited roles they were often stuck in before.
And you have to think this lit a fire under that new Hollywood generation of creators we mentioned.
For sure. Seeing that kind of success, that kind of cultural impact, it must have been incredibly empowering. It showed there's an audience, there's a market, and these stories matter.
Even the fact that people were framing discussions like, what is the significance of Black Panther sociologically into the new Hollywood generation, shows its recognized impact within the industry. It opened doors.
It really did. It gave non-white audiences, especially Black audiences, this imagined world, this fantasy space, which is so important, a space to see yourself reflected powerfully.
Moving Black characters from the sidelines right to the absolute center of a massive blockbuster, that's transformative visibility.
And bringing it back to the individual level, psychology tells us how vital positive representation is for kids and teens of color. Their identity, their self-concept, it's foundational.
Like learning through observation, right? Seeing positive models matters.
Exactly. And having that strong, positive racial or ethnic identity, it acts like a buffer. It boosts self-esteem, helps protect against the hits you take from racism and discrimination, leads to better mental health overall.
And the flip side is also true, unfortunately, lacking that positive reflection.
Yeah, it can lead to internalizing the negativity, believing the stereotypes, which is incredibly damaging to self-worth.
And some studies show real-world consequences too, don't they? Lower self-esteem in kids, maybe even influencing how people are treated by, say, the justice system or police.
Sadly, yes. Negative media portrayals can have tangible, harmful effects. Representation isn't just about feelings, it impacts reality.
So, wrapping this all up, Black Panther wasn't just a blip. It was a watershed moment.
Absolutely. Powerful representation, fostering cultural pride, pushing back hard against negative stereotypes. Its impact was deep, both for audiences and for Hollywood's future direction.
A true cultural phenomenon, really. It showed the hunger for authentic stories and the positive ripple effects they create. A milestone, especially for that new generation of filmmakers.
It really was. Which kind of leaves us, and you listening, with a big question, doesn't it?
Yeah. Thinking about Black Panther's impact.
Yeah.
What's next? What other stories, what other kinds of representation are still needed to keep shifting things?
To build a media landscape that's genuinely equitable and reflective, it makes you think about the ongoing power of these stories and which voices still need to be amplified.
You can find more insights on navigating the entertainment industry and achieving success in Orlando Delbert's work, including his book, Pollyanna's Tear-Soaked Battlefields of Hollywood, a survival guide against the cynicism and the hypocritical, and of course, the Hollywood Unapologetic platform. And always remember, you are the key to your own success. You are the new Hollywood generation.
Be informed, be prepared, and most importantly, be great.
That's it. Be great. Good luck out there.
See you next time.